All right, hello students. This is a quick video lesson to catch you up on the 8th grade narrative study guide if you missed it. As the video goes, you can just fill in your answers. You can pause the video at any time. The answers will be written in the blanks in capital letters. All right. I'm going to briefly cover a couple of these key ideas that maybe aren't very well explained in the study guide. So basically, if you missed the note-taking lesson, this is the note-taking lesson. For questions 1 through 3 here, we have what is the purpose of narrative writing? It's to tell a story. So all of this is about how to tell a story really well. Here you can see we talk about sensory language, which involves the 5 senses. And I asked you about plot. Plot gives your story structure. Plot covers these 6 questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how. Every plot should cover all of those things. If we don't know where something happens, when something happens, or why something's happening, we as the readers get confused. So you want to make sure that your plot covers all 5 of these questions, or 6 of these questions. Next, we have these answers here. Plot is supposed to give the narrative structure, tell what the story is about, and explain the events as they happen. Plot is essentially just a graph of the conflict throughout the story, okay? The climax of the plot, right, on that plot diagram, we're very familiar with this. The climax of that plot is the point of highest tension in the conflict. So as the story is occurring, all the excitement and all of the drama that's happening is leading up to that conflict. These 7 elements here, we have characters, who are the people, animals, or objects who are affected by the plot. We have the setting, which is where and when the story takes place. The conflict, which we said is the problem that must be overcome. Descriptive language or imagery, this is when we use figurative language, dialogue, and vivid verbs. Audience, that's who your story is for. Plot, theme, a major idea expressed in the story, and moral. I want to be clear here that moral and theme are 2 different things. A theme of a story is not necessarily a message that you want to cover. I use the example of James Bond. If you're watching a James Bond movie, James Bond is a bad person. He's violent, he's angry, he treats women very poorly. However, he's still the good guy. That's not a very good moral, right? You should not watch James Bond and say, I want to act like that guy, right? That's a bad moral. But there are themes in James Bond, themes like sacrificing yourself for your country is a noble thing. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but James Bond believes it. That's a theme, okay? Not a moral. We have some examples of conflict: person versus self. We can think of Riley from Inside Out, struggling whether or not she is going to accept the move that her family has made. Person versus person, we got conflict, Batman versus the Joker. This is verbal or physical arguing or fighting. Person versus society, Nick versus Zootopia would be a good example. He's judged because he's different, so he's against society. Here we have person versus nature. Any disaster movie, right? The Titanic versus the iceberg, or people versus a snowstorm. Person versus technology, all of our stories of robot uprisings, right? So humans versus the Matrix. And then person versus God or fate or supernatural. I bundle these all into one. An example might be Hercules versus Hades, right? He's fighting against destiny. He's fighting against the experience that he had as a child that he had no control over, and now he's trying to change his life. So it's Hercules versus Hades, person versus God. Theme, we talked about theme already. Point of view, quick reminder, first person uses things like I. This is going to be very good for stories that are like thrillers or horror stories, because putting yourself in the first person perspective can be scary. And then we have third person, which is that we're viewing a character's thoughts, sometimes multiple characters' thoughts. If it's limited, we can only see one character's perspective. If it's omniscient, we can see all characters' perspectives. What details of the story belong in the exposition? You should get setting, characters, and conflict down right away. We should understand at least the setting and characters by the end of your first couple of pages. All right. Conflict should be expressed before the end of the exposition. What's the job of a hook? Get the reader's attention. What is suspense? This whole section from here onwards, you should already have written down in your notes. Okay. So this is all a repeat. Suspense is a feeling of anxiety or fear. We want to create suspense in our stories for your 8th grade assignment. There are 3 major ways you can work on creating suspense. First, having the audience know something that the characters don't. That's a form of dramatic irony. Second, you, the author, can hide something from the audience, such as in a mystery. And finally, we want to care about the characters. We want to stay invested in the good or ill fortune of those characters. Last but not least, we have our terms for mystery, horror, and thriller. Mystery is attempting to solve a crime. Horror is stories about death and survival. And thriller is stories that involve intense drama or high stakes. So if you didn't get anything here, go back, pause the video, and you should now have all of the information for your study guide.